sure retired Mainers don't face hunger or lose out on the medicines they need. The fiscally responsible way to do that is to make sure the wealthiest Americans pay their fair share into the system. Right now, millionaires and even billionaires pay the same amount into Social Security as someone earning $113,700 a year. We need to scrap the cap entirely to make sure that everyone pays their fair share, regardless of how many lobbyists they know. I'm here today also to support the RAISE Act, introduced by Senators Mark Begich and Patty Murray. This common sense bill increases Social Security benefits for widows, widowers, divorcees, and the children of disability recipients through a 2% payroll tax on earnings over $400,000. We shouldn't penalize these recipients for circumstances beyond their control. Social Security is successful because Americans pay into it and benefit from it, and we should expand on that success as widely as possible. Mitch McConnell, who Susan Collins would vote to make the majority leader if Republicans take the Senate, has pushed for Social Security privatization, raising the retirement age, and reducing benefits through the inaccurate chained CPI formula. Depending on who controls Congress after November 4th, we could see a lot of Social Security changes being pushed through. And in 2011, my opponent, Republican Susan Collins, voted with Mitch McConnell for the Budget Control Act, which reduced the Social Security Administration operating budget. In the past 3 years, the Social Security Administration has lost 11,000 employees, people who represented about 12% of its workforce. Budget cuts have meant consolidating 44 field offices, closing 503 mobile service facilities, and delaying plans to open 8 appeals hearing offices. Those closures and reduced services are the direct result of a budget that Republican Susan Collins voted for. If Mitch McConnell calls the shots in the Senate next year, the RAISE Act won't even get a hearing. Benefits will be on the shopping block. We can't let that happen. Social Security is the most successful insurance program in our nation's history. Rather than taking more from working class people and retirees who have spent a lifetime paying their taxes and giving to their country, Congress should make the contribution system fairer and expand benefits for those who need them. Seniors shouldn't have to go hungry or skip their medication in the most prosperous nation on earth. I'd now like to introduce State Representative Drew Gatine of Westbrook, who will share with us his experiences both in the state legislature and what he hears from his constituents.
Thank you, Shenna, and thank you for the opportunity to speak for a couple minutes about the importance of Social Security and why we need to protect it and expand it. For generations now, Social Security has been part of the contract we've made with our older citizens and those with disabilities. Tens of millions of Americans and hundreds of thousands of Mainers rely on it for their retirement income and for a helping hand when they can't work. Working Americans pay into the system knowing that it will be there for them when they need it, and our government needs to honor that guarantee. Like so many other important programs, Social Security is under attack. Just last week, we heard our own governor insult Mainers who rely on Social Security. He called Social Security a redistribution of wealth, taking money from hardworking taxpayers and giving it to a growing number of welfare recipients. That's a quote. Those are his words. Republicans in Congress have Social Security in their crosshairs. We've already seen office closures in rural areas, thanks to the Budget Control Act that Susan Collins voted for. Republicans in Washington prioritize the wealthy and multinational corporations ahead of our seniors and people with disabilities. And too often, Susan Collins stands with those same Republicans. This is a classic case of politicians blaming the little guy for their own failures. It happens here in Augusta and in Washington, D.C. But let me tell you, it needs to stop. Our seniors aren't the problem. People with disabilities struggling to keep their families together aren't the problem. The problem is that too many politicians forget who they represent and why they were elected. We shouldn't be attacking Social Security. We should make sure the wealthiest Americans pay their fair share and put seniors ahead of corporate tax breaks. We need to keep our promise to our seniors today and to the seniors of tomorrow, our parents, our neighbors, and our children. We owe it to them. That's why I'm proud to stand here today with Shenna Bellows. Shenna gets it. If you know Shenna, you know that when she takes on an issue, she charges ahead full steam. We all have our stories. I grew up in a family with a disabled father. He was a hard-working, working-class guy, an auto mechanic with a small business who supported our family. As he got older, his disability got worse, and he eventually had to give that up. As a family with 4 kids, we needed help. Social Security provided that help for us. We could stay in our home, buy groceries, and pay our bills. It wasn't much, but it helped supplement the income from my mom's work and from their savings. Like millions of Americans, my parents and grandparents needed Social Security, and it was there for them. We need to keep our commitment to the thousands of Mainers who rely on it to this day and send people to Washington, like Shenna Bellows, who will fight for us to keep that commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Gattin. I'd now like to introduce Jim Lyson of Lewiston. Jim's father passed away when he was 18, and under the old Social Security survivor benefit system, he was able to receive benefits while he attended college. That's not the case today. The RAISE Act would fix that, and Jim is here to tell us what those benefits meant to him and why the RAISE Act is the right way to bring them back for college-age survivors and beneficiaries. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you.
And we'll let Priscilla.
Good morning. My name is Jim Lyson. I'm from Lewiston, Maine. I'm a volunteer with the Maine People's Alliance and a grassroots ambassador through the Center for Community Change Grassroots Ambassador Program in an effort to really have a proactive agenda with respect to Social Security and other retirement security issues. And we really, stories are, everyone has a Social Security story. I've got one. I didn't realize I had one. I started thinking about it, and when I was 18, my father died. I was ready to enter college. 2 weeks after the funeral, I'm off to college. I was a straight A student in school, but things weren't going too well. I struggled. I missed my father. And all of a sudden, I got this care package from my mother, and along with the really good cookies were 2 checks, one from Social Security and one from the Veterans Administration. My father was a veteran, but served in World War II. So I called her and I go, what are these checks about? And she goes, well, they're, because your father died. And you'll receive them until you're 21, as long as you stay in school. And it was an inspiration to me because I was struggling. I was looking for, that connection to my father, who had always been my inspiration. And he, it seemed like he was still with me, supporting me. And it really made a difference. Today's dollars, it wouldn't have been a lot of money. But it was a lot of money to me back then and enabled me to stay in school. But again, as been mentioned by both Shenna and Drew, we need to have a proactive agenda. We need to support candidates who are behind these proactive agendas across the benefit increases. Caregiver credits. My wife stopped working in order to care for my daughter up to age 6. She's now taking care of her 96-year-old mother who lives independently because my wife and her sister spend 40 hours a week with her. No benefits Social Security-wise. That needs to change too. Shenna talked about better ways of tying the cost of living, inflation into it, and making it relevant to seniors. But most importantly for me is there are many students out there that need a helping hand, and the survivor benefit could be the difference like it was for me. And again, I'd like to see it raised up to age 24. We know it takes longer for students to go to school these days. So again, give those students the opportunity that I had, and back in 1980 it was eliminated. And the message then was, they can get inexpensive school loans. They don't need Social Security survivor benefits any longer. We know how that worked out. So again, support candidates who share these views. We need people in Congress to work to both protect and expand Social Security. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And that is so important. It's important to keep in mind that 1 in 3 Maine seniors are surviving solely on Social Security benefits and having to make difficult choices because the benefit is the average benefit is just under $12,700 a year. So finally, I'd like to introduce Sandy and Ole Jaeger. Sandy and Ole Jaeger are retired and living in Georgetown on Social Security alone. They sometimes find it difficult to pay their bills, and a benefit increase would mean far fewer difficult decisions. Sandy and Ole.
Thank you, Shenna. I am a 78-year-old woman whose Social Security income is $655.80 per month. My choice as a young mother was to forego full employment, to rely on my husband's modest salary, and to be there to raise our 4 children. We were fortunate we had that choice, and we learned to be frugal and carefully prioritize our expenses. My husband's Social Security is close to the national average at $1,324 per month, and neither of us has any pension income whatsoever. Because comprehensive health insurance is so important to us, our health companion plan immediately strips $360 per month from our Social Security income, and our deductibles, co-pays, dental bills suck out thousands more per year. Yet, we consider ourselves among the fortunate few because thanks to our hard work, frugality, and lots of luck, we were able to put away a modest nest egg which we fight to retain so that funds can help us if and when we become frail. But in truth, every month we pull more from our savings just to live and pay our bills. And I assure you, we still prioritize every expense and remain very frugal. We agonize over what it must mean to those in Maine who are compelled to live only on Social Security and have to make horrific choices that continue to place stresses on their emotions and strip away at their dignity. America can do better. America must do better. And Shenna Bellows has begun to show us the way. Shenna, scrap the cap.
I will. Thank you, and that's what this is about. We can strengthen and expand Social Security benefits for today's seniors and generations to come in a fiscally responsible way by scrapping the cap so that the wealthiest Americans pay their fair share. At this point, we'd be happy to take questions about what we've chatted about today. Are there any questions about our proposals?
Shenna, what would you say to those who might say that your proposal tends to, I guess, penalize people who have been successful in life?
I would say that Americans making over $113,700 a year should pay their fair share and should pay into the system. Why Social Security is so successful is because it's an earned benefit. We all contribute and we all benefit. And that's an important principle worth maintaining. But right now, it's regressive in its payment structure, insofar as Americans are only paying into up to the first $113,700 worth of income. That's why we need to scrap the cap and expand the existing benefits for our seniors in our communities today.
A lot of the talk you hear about reforming Social Security right now out of Washington, at least I hear, is around a variety of issues, but I mean, there's some people talking about a means test when somebody actually reaches retirement age. If they're wealthy, maybe they shouldn't get so many benefits. Others, talking about our life expectancy's growing. What's the problem with adding 2 years before you can collect your benefits? What are your thoughts on those two?
This is a clear choice in this election. There are 2 ways in which we can reform Social Security. I'm proposing that we expand existing benefits and strengthen Social Security by scrapping the cap and making sure that the wealthiest Americans pay their fair share. In contrast, the Republican proposals include raising the retirement age, privatizing Social Security in part, and means testing. And I think that all 3 of those proposals are a mistake. I think it would be absolutely wrong to privatize Social Security when it has been so successful. It's the most successful insurance program in our nation's history, and it is thriving. Means testing undermines the basic principle that everyone pays in and everyone benefits. Means testing would transform Social Security from an earned benefit to a handout, and that's not what this is about. This is about making sure that everyone pays their fair share and everyone benefits. And finally, in terms of raising the retirement age, that may work for members of Congress and white-collar workers, but it won't work for working class Mainers across the state who are engaged in very physical and heavy labor. For example, I'm the daughter of a carpenter. I don't see my father or people who work with him getting up on a roof at age 69 or 70. So again, I think that demonstrates, those proposals demonstrate the disconnect between Washington politicians and the realities here in our community. And we are proposing a fiscally responsible proposal to strengthen Social Security for today's seniors and generations to come.
I wanted to add something on the life expectancy. If you look at the demographics, you know, if you're middle class or upper middle class and white, that's been the case. But if you look at low-income people, people of color, and people who, as Shenna says, have difficult jobs in Maine, you look at the lumber industry, the fishing industry, farming, you know, a lot of those industries, people aren't living any longer. So it's a demographic that's a little false for most of our state and a good part of our nation as well. So we'll look at those numbers, and again, people have worked. I'm retired at the end of this year. I've worked 44 years full time. I mean, I deserve retirement with dignity and with security. So, and I'm better off than most people. So it's a struggle, and I think sometimes when we use these demographic statistics about living longer, they really don't apply to a lot of people in Maine.